Tonight, we spend the night on Bray Road, where a simple drive home became one of America's strangest modern folklore stories. This is the High Strangeness Sleep Society. Chapter 1. The Curve Before the Bray Farm. Later accounts place Lori Endrizzi behind the wheel after a late shift managing a bar in Elkhorn, Wisconsin in the fall of 1989. Bray Road ran through the farm country outside town, past Hospital Road and around a curve near the Bray farm. At that hour, the fields had gone dark. The road appeared a piece at a time in the headlights, pale pavement giving way to a narrow shoulder, then ditch and field. Bray Road was one of the roads people used to get home. As Endrizzi approached the curve, the moving beam found something stopped near the edge of the road. It had its back toward her. At first, she saw a brownish-gray body bent low, its knees beneath it. The upper body leaned over something on the ground. Its elbows were raised away from its sides and the forepaws turned upward. Whatever it had found on the road, it held between them. The posture stayed with her. An animal feeding on roadkill was ordinary enough on a Wisconsin road. This one seemed to be holding its food palms up. Her car drew closer. She saw pointed ears, a long muzzle and chin, and teeth showing around what it was eating. Fur covered the body. The claws faced outward from the raised forelimbs. She later estimated its height, had it stood fully at about 5 feet 7 inches, and its weight at roughly 150 pounds. The animal turned its head toward the car. Endrizzi thought its eyes glowed, though she also supplied the likely cause, the light from her own headlamps reflecting back at her. It did not bolt for the ditch. It stayed beside the road, its body still gathered over the carcass, and looked toward the approaching vehicle. The view lasted only while the beam crossed it. Behind the animal lay the unlit field. Ahead of Endrizzi, the pavement continued into the curve. She kept moving. The road bent, the headlights swung away, and the shape passed out of the mirrors behind her. She did not stop to search the shoulder. Nothing came home in the car with her, and no photograph or track fixed the animal to the place where she had seen it. What remained was a sequence she could repeat. The back turned toward her, knees bent under the body, raised elbows, claws turned out, the food held between upturned paws, then the head coming around to look. After that night, Endrizzi stopped using Bray Road after dark. Other roads reached the same places, and she took them. For nearly 2 years, her account remained a private one. Then another woman described an animal on Bray Road, and Endrizzi went looking through library books for the closest picture she could find. Chapter 2. The Dog That Stood Up. Around the same period, 11-year-old Heather Bowie was outside with a friend near Bowers Road. The road lay in the same Elkhorn countryside among houses, fields, and rows of corn. At the field edge, the children noticed a large animal. From a distance, it first looked like a dog, which gave them a familiar name for it and no particular reason to run. As they watched, the proportions stopped fitting. Heather described silver-colored fur mixed with brown, and a face shaped like a coyote's. The rear legs looked larger than those of a dog or coyote and differently made. Then the animal rose. It stood upright and looked at the children. Heather and her friend turned toward the house. The animal came after them in long leaps, covering the ground behind them as they ran. It followed about halfway to the house, then stopped and went back toward the cornfield. The girls reached the house, frightened. Heather asked the adults to return with her to the place where the animal had been. They declined. No one went out to measure a print or search the corn. By the time her account appeared in the newspaper, what survived was what she had been able to see while moving away from it: the mixed silver and brown fur, the narrow face, the unusual hind legs, and the moment a large dog-shaped animal stood on them. In September of 1991, a farmer named Scott Bray later said he saw another large animal in the field behind his house. His account was preserved years afterward in documentary coverage rather than in the first newspaper article. He described gray and black hair, a muscular body, pointed ears, and a tail. Whatever it was, it stood taller than a German shepherd. He had seen it in a field bearing his family name, beside the road that carried it too. The name had not yet attached itself to any creature. It belonged to the farm and to an unpaved country route on the edge of town. Heather's sighting had remained with her family. Endrizzi had changed the road she drove at night. Scott Bray's animal passed through a field and was gone. By Halloween of 1991, the descriptions were still separate things. They had been carried home from fields and roads, and none of the people who held them knew that a file was beginning to collect at the county animal shelter. Chapter 3: Halloween near Sitler Road. Halloween night in 1991 came with poor visibility. Doris Gibson remembered the air as kind of smoggy, and moisture had settled over the car. She was driving on Bray Road. Earlier that evening, she had struck a bird, so when one of the front tires lifted as if it had passed over another small animal, she understood the movement through the steering wheel in the same way. Gibson continued another 50 or 60 feet and stopped before Sitler Road. She got out and walked toward the rear of the car. The pavement held no bird, no small animal, no blood, and no carcass. She looked back along the short distance she had just driven. A large, hairy form was running toward her. Gibson could see its chest as it came. Its hair looked dark brown rather than black, long and straight over a body larger than the family's Rottweiler. She could not say with certainty how it ran. The visible chest made her think it might be upright, at least as it charged, but she had already turned back toward the driver's door. She reached the seat as the animal reached the car. In the interview published that December, Gibson brought her hands together hard to reproduce the sound of the impact on the trunk. The metal was wet. She said the animal caught the top of it and then slid away, its nails scratching the surface as the car pulled forward. The sound was the part she could reproduce in the newspaper office. Her palms met. The people listening heard the flat report of the blow. Outside on Halloween, the same motion had come through the rear of a car with Gibson already behind the wheel. She accelerated down Bray Road. Nothing in the immediate aftermath supplied an identity. No hair or tissue was recovered from the car. The road held no carcass that might explain what had drawn the animal there, or what Gibson's tire had crossed. She had a wet trunk with marks on it and an account of a brown, long-haired body reaching the car before she could leave. Around 9 that same evening, Gibson drove the road again. An 11-year-old girl was in the car, returning from trick-or-treating. The child pointed toward a kneeling shape beside the road and said that it appeared to be eating something. Gibson did not stop a second time. She pressed the accelerator. The account later grew in the retelling. Years afterward, Gibson described hearing heavy footfalls on the asphalt while the animal followed. That detail does not appear in the contemporary newspaper scene and belongs to the later version. The first telling is spare enough. The lifted tire, the empty pavement, the chest of an animal running toward her, her hands clapping together to make the sound it left on the car. By the time the wet metal dried, the road had gone quiet. The scratches remained. Chapter 4. 2 Nights at St. Coletta. Before Linda Godfrey brought the Elkhorn reports together, another account had been kept inside one Wisconsin family for more than 50 years. The account entered the Bray Road record after the article appeared in 1991, when relatives of a man named Mark Shackleman told what they said had happened to him. It belongs to family memory, not the contemporary file. The family placed Shackleman at St. Coletta, a Catholic institution near Jefferson, about 45 minutes from Elkhorn by modern roads. St. Coletta had opened in 1904. By the 1930s, its building stood in an older landscape that included preserved indigenous mounds, funerary earthworks made centuries before the school. The mounds are real. Nothing in their history identifies what Shackleman's family later said he saw near one. He worked as a night watchman. His rounds took him outside after the buildings had settled and the grounds were dark, checking the property while the people inside slept. On one night in 1936, according to the account, he came upon a large hairy figure digging into or beside a mound. Later, tellings described it as more than 6 feet tall, with a face resembling a canid. Shackleman watched the shape rise from the ground. It stood on 2 legs and moved away upright. He had no camera with him. The story preserves no track measurement sample, written incident report, or object carried back from the grounds. What it preserves is a watchman returning from his rounds with an account that asked for a second look. The following night, Shackleman went back with 2 other men. This time, they were not surprised alone. They had chosen to enter the same grounds together and see whether the figure returned. In the family version, it did. The men saw the hairy form upright. From it came a short sound that later retellings rendered as 3 syllables, ga-da-ra. Words written down long after a night like that can acquire clean edges the original sound never had. The phrase survives because somebody repeated it, another person remembered it, and the family passed it on. No contemporary page shows when those syllables were first set in that order. The men left without a photograph or identifying trace. Shackleman's story remained a family story through the decades in which the grounds changed and the children at St. Coletta grew old. It did not enter the first public record of the beast because that record did not yet exist. Only after Godfrey's article gave the Elkhorn reports a common name did the older account find a place beside them. A large hairy figure, a canid face, an upright departure. The resemblance was enough for later writers to join the stories. The distance, the 55 years, and the source remained. Nothing in the account establishes that Shackleman encountered the animal later reported near Bray Road. When the newspaper asked whether anyone else had seen such a figure, one family already had a story waiting. Chapter 5. The file marked Werewolf. Linda Godfrey worked at a small local newspaper called The Week. She reported, drew cartoons, and made illustrations when an article needed one. Late in December of 1991, a tip reached the paper. Walworth County Humane Officer John Fredrickson had been receiving calls about an unusual animal. The sources do not all stand at the same distance from the events. Elkhorn is the seat of Walworth County in southeastern Wisconsin. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, people reported large dog-like animals around Bray Road, Bowers Road, and the nearby farm country. Lori Andrizzi, Heather Bowie, and Doris Gibson described their encounters in Godfrey's newspaper article of December 29, 1991. Other names and incidents entered the story through later interviews, books, and documentary films. Linda Godfrey connected the reports in print. She did not witness the animal herself. Godfrey went to see Fredrickson at the county animal shelter. He had a small collection of notes on unusual reports, 6 or 7 by the count later given. The file was marked Werewolf. Among the weaker items were a report of unusual tracks and another of a two-legged animal pursuing a deer. Neither came with enough physical documentation to identify what had been seen. Andrizzi and Gibson offered more. Godfrey spoke with them separately and listened while each woman described the road, the animal, and the way it moved. Andrizzi told her about the kneeling posture and the food held in its upturned forepaws. Gibson described stopping near Sitler Road and the animal striking the trunk. After learning of Gibson's encounter, Andrizzi went to the library. She opened books and compared pictures until she found the closest match to the figure beside the road. The illustration showed a werewolf. The image carried the long muzzle, the furred body, and the raised, partly human posture Andrizzi had described. Beneath it was a familiar name, Werewolf. Fredrickson offered the ordinary explanation. A wolf or coyote springing upward to pounce can rise high enough to look bipedal for a moment. Headlights change depth and color. A moving car allows only a short view. Moisture, darkness, and distance remove detail. None of the early descriptions matched perfectly. The reported sizes, colors, posture, and facial features varied from one witness to the next. The explanation covered much of the roadside setting. Wisconsin had coyotes, large dogs, and the occasional uncertain view of a wild animal. A canid feeding on roadkill belonged beside a rural road. A canid at the field edge belonged near corn. Fredrickson did not say what every caller had seen. In one of Godfrey's early notes, he observed that the county was getting stranger. Godfrey returned to the newspaper with interviews, a few cards from a file, and a creature she could only draw from other people's words. Chapter 6. The Marks on the Cars. Years later, in a documentary account, Godfrey remembered looking over the rear of Gibson's car. She described 2 sets of marks descending over it, marks she considered consistent with claws. No accessible contemporary photograph fixes their shape, and the record supplies no measurement, sample, or forensic examination. Scratches can remain after the event that made them has become impossible to reconstruct. Godfrey saw marks on a car. Gibson said an animal made them. The same later retelling added the sound of heavy feet against the road as Gibson reached the driver's seat. It fits the charge she had already described in 1991, but it comes from a later layer of the account. The newspaper preserved the impact through a different sound, Gibson striking her hands together during the interview. Another car was said to carry something away from the roads around Elkhorn. Tom Brichta's encounter also survives through later documentary testimony. He placed it in the early 1990s on a Saturday night in late July or early August, though the exact year remains uncertain. He was returning from a wedding reception with two friends, Scott and Chris, along Highway C. Fog had reduced the road ahead to roughly 2 car lengths. The headlights lit a short moving room, pavement, shoulder, and then a pale wall without depth. Before anyone saw a figure, an odor reached the car. Brichta compared it to a skunk, foul and strong enough to announce something outside before the lights found it. At the edge of the visible road, he noticed what looked like a hand extending toward the lane. One of his companions followed his gaze and saw the form as well. They described a large, hairy body streaked white, gray, and black. The fog in the passing car left them no clear view of a face. The arm reached toward the moving vehicle. Pointed fingers or long nails contacted the side. Afterward, Brichta said a small piece of pinstriping was missing. The three kept driving. They recovered no hair or tissue and brought back no other trace that could name the thing beside Highway C. The lost strip was a small alteration to the car, not a biological sample. Like Gibson's scratches, it was physically suggestive and too poorly documented to decide what happened. Gibson's account appeared in the contemporary article and began when her tire lifted on Bray Road. Brichta's was recorded years later and began with an odor and fog on Highway C. Gibson saw the chest of a dark brown animal running toward her. Brichta saw streaked hair and something like a hand without the face. Each car continued into the night. Each reportedly carried marks away from the encounter. Neither carried away an answer. Chapter 7. The Beast Goes to Press. Godfrey sat down to turn the interviews into a newspaper story. On her desk were separate accounts that had never before shared a page. Endrisi supplied one stretch of Bray Road, Gibson another. Fredrickson's cards widened the area without making the reports agree. She protected Endrisi and Gibson at first by giving them the names Barbara and Pat. Their accounts appeared in the first person, set beside Fredrickson's explanation of a wolf or coyote rising as it sprang. The article allowed the reports and the ordinary answer to occupy the same page. Godfrey also had to supply a picture. She drew a furred figure crouched at the roadside with food in its paws, working from Endrisi's description of the animal before it turned toward the car. A drawing could put the elbows where the witness remembered them and give the head its pointed ears and muzzle. It could not show the uncertainty of a moving beam, or the way a shape changes while a driver is passing it. The story received a title, Tracking Down the Beast of Bray Road. On December 29, 1991, the issue of the week was published. The separate accounts now appeared beneath one headline, beside one illustration, under one name. A reader could move from the kneeling figure to the animal at the trunk, then across to the humane officer's coyote or wolf explanation without leaving the article. The differences occupied the same page. Godfrey and her editor expected a curiosity for a slow news week. Calls began arriving at the paper, then letters. People who had kept their own reports private recognized something in the descriptions and wanted to add what they had seen. Some lived nearby. Others contacted the paper from farther away. The file could no longer be held in a few note cards at the animal shelter. Each response brought another ordinary object into the newsroom: a ringing telephone, an envelope, a written name, a place marked on a road. Godfrey had expected to finish one story. Instead, the material began arriving after publication. In January, a recap in Janesville moved through the Associated Press. Radio programs called. Television producers began looking for Elkhorn, for Godfrey, and for the witnesses behind the borrowed names. The article did not prove that one animal accounted for every report. It placed the reports close enough together for readers to see a cluster. The contradictions remained on the page: brown-gray and silver-brown fur, a figure kneeling at roadkill, a shape rising near a field, a larger animal charging a car. The common name held them together. Before publication, Ndrizi had a road she would no longer drive at night. Heather Bowie had a run from the field to the house. Gibson had scratches on wet metal. After publication, each incident belonged to the Beast of Bray Road. The next set of headlights moving slowly along that curve did not necessarily belong to someone going home. Some of them had come to look. Chapter 8. The Road After the Article. The calls and letters continued to collect at the newspaper. Curiosity seekers drove Bray Road after dark. Some passed once and returned. Others stopped and walked the roadside, looking into ditches and toward the field edges. Television crews arrived and set lights around the farm buildings. The attention had its own physical pattern. Headlights slowed near the curve. People stood where Ndrizi had remained, behind glass, and looked into the same dark fields and roadside ditches. A member of the Bray family later remembered the flashing lights around the property. His mother had recently been widowed and was living there alone while strangers moved along the road at night, looking for the animal that now carried the family name. Elkhorn found room for jokes about silver bullets. People who had reported sightings were teased. Some kept their identities private, while Ndrizi and Gibson later allowed their real names to be used. Gibson came to regret the publicity attached to her report. The public creature grew more definite as the first views receded. Illustrations could straighten the body, lengthen the claws, and decide the color of the eyes. Retellings could make every witness describe the same height and the same face. The early reports had not been so settled. They came from short encounters, moving vehicles, poor light, and people who did not agree on every part. Even the oldest story, brought forward from St. Coletta, had arrived by memory rather than by a page written in 1936. Bray Road itself offered no conclusion. It continued past farm entrances, field edges, ditches, and corn. Each curve removed the pavement behind a car as it advanced. In daylight, drivers could see where the shoulder ended and the field began. At night, the headlamps held only the next stretch. Bray Road had been one of the roads people used to get home. After the article, people drove it so they could remain outside and look. Years of books, films, and larger creatures followed, but Ndrizi's first sequence stayed small enough to fit inside the passing beam of a car. No 7-foot figure stood squarely in the road. The animal was already kneeling when she found it, brown-gray fur bent over something dead. Its elbows were raised. What it held rested between forepaws turned upward like hands. The picture Endrizzi found in the library gave her a werewolf. Godfrey's drawing gave the newspaper its beast. Neither picture had been there on the night itself, only the road, the car, and the animal. Endrizzi approached the curve after a late shift. Headlights moved across the shoulder. The long head turned, and reflected light came from the eyes. Nothing followed her. The creature remained beside the pavement as the car passed. She went on toward home, and the curve closed behind her,